Summary of Chapter 5 of Sapiens. A Brief History of Humankind. History's Biggest Fraud in Chapter 5. Yuval Noah Harari discusses the agricultural revolution, one of the most important turning points in human history. Surprisingly, Harari argues that agriculture was not necessarily a great improvement for individual humans. In fact, he calls it history's biggest fraud. The chapter explains how farming began, why humans shifted from hunting and gathering to agriculture, the hidden costs of farming, how wheat domesticated humans, why human societies became larger, but often less healthy and less happy. Harari challenges the common belief that agriculture automatically improved human life. 1. The agricultural revolution. The agricultural revolution began around 12,000 years ago. Humans started growing crops, domesticating animals, building permanent settlements. Major crops included wheat, rice, potatoes, corn. Animals domesticated included sheep, goats, cows, chickens. This change transformed human society permanently. 2. Why did humans start farming? Many people assume humans adopted agriculture because it made life easier. Harari disagrees. He explains that agriculture increased food production, allowed populations to grow, supported larger communities, but for individual people, life often became harder. Hunter-gatherers usually had varied diets, more free time, better health. Farmers often faced long working hours, repetitive labor, poor nutrition, greater disease risk. 3. Wheat domesticated humans. One of the chapter's most famous ideas is humans did not domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated humans. Harari argues that humans changed their entire lifestyle to serve wheat. People cleared forests, carried water, removed stones, worked long hours in fields, all to help wheat spread across the world. From an evolutionary perspective, wheat became one of the most successful plants in history because humans dedicated their lives to growing it. 4. Life became harder for farmers. Harari explains that early farmers worked more than hunter-gatherers. Farmers faced back pain, joint problems, malnutrition, crop failures, hunger during droughts. Agriculture required constant labor, planting, watering, protecting crops, harvesting, storing food. Hunter-gatherers often had more flexible and enjoyable lives. 5. Why didn't humans abandon farming? If farming made life harder, why continue? Because agriculture created a trap. Farming increased food supplies slightly, causing population growth. More people meant more mouths to feed, greater dependence on farming. Once populations expanded, returning to hunting and gathering became impossible. Harari compares this to modern life. People work harder to improve life, but often become trapped in more stressful systems. 6. The luxury trap. Harari introduces the concept of the luxury trap. Humans adopt changes, hopping for easier lives, but these changes create new responsibilities and pressures. For example, farmers stored grain for safety. Storage required protection. Permanent homes needed maintenance. Villages required social rules. Small improvements gradually created more complicated lives. Harari says this pattern still exists today. 7. Permanent settlements changed society. Agriculture encouraged humans to settle permanently. This led to villages, towns, cities, property ownership. Permanent settlements created new social problems. Conflict over land, theft, inequality, hierarchies. Hunter-gatherers had fewer possessions and often more equality. 8. Population explosion. Agriculture supported much larger populations. A farming village could produce more calories per area than hunting and gathering. As a result, human populations increased rapidly. More children survived. Civilizations expanded. However, Harari argues that this benefited the species as a whole, not necessarily individual happiness. 9. The role of children. Hunter-gatherers usually had fewer children because constant movement made childcare difficult. Farmers could support larger families because children helped with farm labor. More children meant more workers, more food production, faster population growth, but it also increased dependence on agriculture. 10. Disease and farming. Permanent settlements created ideal conditions for disease. Problems included crowded living conditions, poor sanitation, close contact with animals. Diseases spread more easily among farming populations than among small hunter-gatherer groups. Domesticated animals also introduced new illnesses to humans. 11. The domestication of animals. Harari examines how humans domesticated animals for meat, milk, labor, transportation, but he also highlights the suffering of domesticated animals. Animals were often confined, controlled selectively, bred, prevented from living naturally. Harari argues that the agricultural revolution created enormous animal suffering on a massive scale. 12. Evolution does not care about happiness. One major idea in the chapter is evolution rewards survival and reproduction, not happiness. Agriculture allowed humans to reproduce more successfully. Therefore, farming spread even if individual lives became harder. This explains why human populations grew. Agriculture, many people suffered more physically. 13. Property and inequality. Farming created wealth accumulation. People could now own land, crops, animals, storage, buildings. This led to social classes, rich and poor divisions, power imbalances. Hunter-gatherer societies often had fewer material inequalities because possessions were limited. 14. The psychological cost of farming. Farmers lived with constant anxiety. Crop failures, droughts, invasions, taxes, food shortages. Hunter-gatherers relied on diverse food sources, making them less vulnerable to single disasters. Agriculture increased dependence on a narrow range of crops. 15. Did agriculture improve human life? Harari strongly challenges the traditional view that agriculture represented progress. Yes, agriculture created cities, kingdoms, writing, technology, but for ordinary individuals, life often became harder, less healthy, more stressful. The agricultural revolution benefited human civilization collectively, while often harming individual well-being. 16. Human choices and historical change. Harari explains that history does not always follow rational planning. People did not intentionally create modern civilization. Instead, small decisions accumulated slowly. Humans adapted step by step. Long-term consequences were unpredictable. For example, planting slightly more wheat eventually led to cities, governments, empires, industrial societies. 17. The myth of progress. The chapter continues Harari's criticism of the idea that history always improves human happiness. Modern societies may have more technology, more wealth, more comfort, but they also experience stress, overwork, environmental damage, loneliness. Harari asks readers to reconsider what progress truly means. 18. Agriculture changed nature forever. Farming transformed ecosystems. Forests were cleared, rivers redirected, wild species displaced, humans increasingly reshaped nature for their needs. This marked the beginning of large-scale environmental transformation. 19. Wheat as a historical force. Harari humorously describes wheat almost like a ruler controlling humanity. Wheat spread globally because humans protected it, cultivated it, expanded its territory. In return, humans sacrificed freedom, simpler lifestyles, physical comfort. This perspective reverses the normal idea that humans fully controlled agriculture. 20. The foundations of civilization. Despite its problems, agriculture made later civilization possible. Without farming, humanity likely would never have developed cities, writing systems, governments, empires, science, modern technology. The agricultural revolution laid the foundation for all later history. Main themes of Chapter 51. Agriculture was not pure progress. Farming increased human power, but often worsened individual lives too. Humans became trapped by success. Population growth made agriculture unavoidable. 3. Evolution rewards reproduction, not happiness. Agriculture spread because it supported larger populations. 4. Civilization came with costs. Permanent settlements created inequality, disease, and hard labor. 5. Human history is full of unintended consequences. Small changes eventually transformed the world dramatically. Important concepts explained simply. What is the agricultural revolution? The shift from hunting and gathering to farming and permanent settlements. Why does Harari call it history's biggest? Agriculture increased population and civilization, but often made individual lives harder. What is the luxury trap? When people adopt changes that seem beneficial but later create more stress and responsibilities. How did wheat domesticate humans? Humans reorganized their entire lives around growing and protecting wheat. Lessons from the Chapter 1. More power does not always mean more happiness. Civilization improved human control over nature, but often reduced personal well-being too. Historical changes can trap societies. Once agriculture expanded, humans could not easily return to earlier lifestyles. 3. Progress has hidden costs. Technological and economic growth often creates new problems. 4. Humans reshape both nature and themselves. Agriculture transformed ecosystems, societies, and human behavior permanently. Conclusion. Chapter 5 of Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, presents a radical reinterpretation of the agricultural revolution. Yuval Noah Harari argues that farming allowed Homo sapiens to dominate the world, build civilizations, and increase population, but often at the cost of individual freedom, health, and happiness. The chapter reveals that agriculture created both success and suffering. Civilization was built on hard labor and inequality. Human progress is more complicated than it first appears. Most importantly, the chapter asks readers to question one of humanity's deepest assumptions. Did civilization truly improve human life? Or did humans sacrifice personal well-being in exchange for collective power and growth?